Hi friends, welcome to today's video. So in this video we are going to write our network layer, basically the network module for our app. Now in the last video we created a reusable network library, and the same library we are going to use in this particular project. Okay, now to completely understand this video, I like you to watch three videos if you have not watched. The first is the dependency container, because I'm going to use dependency injection, and I have made this video as part 4 long back, where I have used this Swinjet library to inject dependency. So I suggest you to watch it one time so that you can understand that how the dependencies are being handled in this project. Now, apart from this, one more video that I want you to watch, that is the number 8, where I have basically set up dev QA and prod environment, because in this video we are going to use this concept to differentiate, like let's say that when I run the dev environment I should get the base URL for the dev, when I run the QA I should get it for the QA, right? So this is the second video that I'd like you to watch before watching this video. And obviously this the last video that where I have created this network module, so this is also necessary to watch before starting this video. Okay, so that's all for the prerequisites for this video. Now let's start. So in the last video we created our busy network library, okay, and then we also see one example that how we can actually use it. Okay, create it locally. And so let me close this, and what I'll do, I'll drag and drop my library here. Okay, so now you can see that I have the busy network library into my project. Now we have to do one more thing before we use it, that is to go to general, and so BG network, yeah, here we go. Okay, so now we have added this, that means we are good to use it. Now to do to use this library, first what we are going to do, we are going to build a wrapper of this library so that now I can just use it throughout my project. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to create a network folder here. So let me go here and create a new group. I'll call this as network. Now the functionality of this network will be, or network module will be, to use the BG network uh, library. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to create here is BG network manager. Okay, now what will the functionality of this class, this functionality of this class will be to talk to your busy network library. Okay, so what we're going to do, first thing is that let's import our library. Okay, and let's create a class called BG network manager, and instead of calling it a concrete class, let's create the implementation for this. And before this, let's create a protocol with the BG network manager name. Okay, and this class which we are going to create, this will confirm this protocol. Okay, now if you see in the sources here, so what we have done, this is the method that basically we are talking, right? So let me create the same method here. Let's remove this throws, I don't think we need throws here. So it's just simple make request here, and then now once we have declared it, the same thing has to be implemented here as well. Now it is giving error because we are using any publisher, so we have to import our combine. Okay, now to make or to talk to the library, we need a object of this library, right? So that means here we need something like a network, which will be a object of what, will be the object of basically this busy network type, right? Now instead of creating a concrete object, I'll come through the protocol. So I'll create an object of type protocol, and then here in the init method we can initialize it. Now we have to call this method inside our busy network, which is this make request from here. Okay, so basically whenever you call from anywhere in your app, you will pass your builder object, we have already discussed in the last video, type, and then it will call it to the library. So here what we are going to do, we are going to return network dot make request builder. We are already getting a builder object, that is good. And then the type also we are getting, that is mm, the type here. Okay, so but okay, so now we are getting this error that call can throw but it is not marked with try. Okay, now because I have removed the throw keyword, that's the reason that it's giving error. Let's see that we actually require throw keyword here or not. Okay, so let me remove it from here also, remove it from here also, and see what's the error that we actually get after removing it. Okay, so everything is fine. I'm just getting one build error that it's not able to throw, obviously because now I have removed this throw keyword here. What we need to do, we need to return, and we can use again the concept of combine here, return fail, and here error, and error will be your the same error that we are actually returning earlier. Okay, and obviously this has to go on erase to any publisher. Okay, this should solve the error. So now I'm not having any error in the busy network library, and the error should go away from here also. Okay, so now I have created the wrapper to actually call my busy network library, right? Now what the second thing that is required, the second thing that is required is the base URL and endpoint. Okay, now in my previous videos I have already just the number 4 and number 8 that I showed you in the initial of the video. So I have defined the base URL. Now if you see, the path that I have followed is very standard and used in many industry level projects, is to have a configuration file and there you can define as many as parameter which has to be unique as per the target or as per your schema. So right now in my previous video I just have the base URL. Okay, now let's say that apart from base URL I need a few other parameters also here to talk to actually my network environment, that is API key and the host. So let me bring those things. So here actually we are going to use this free rapid API, and you can create your own account, and once you create the account you will get the API key, basically this, and the host. Okay, so these two actually we have to pass. Host, if you see, this is fixed, and API key you have to sign it. So you can just create a your own free account, you can sign it and then have your API key ready. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy these two things. Okay, and paste it here. Okay, now let's write it in the same format. It don't take a hyphen, so I replace this with underscore. Okay, let me do it quickly. What I have done, I have signed in already here, and I'll just copy this actual API key and paste it here. Now as we don't have multiple no actual real endpoint, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to keep it same for all the target. Okay, and if you see the real API, where is that, this is this one, right? bhagavadgita.api.com. Okay, so I'm not keeping slash dev, but in QA we have QA, in prod we have prod, but if I run this three different target, I'll have this three different values. Okay, again I'll suggest you watching that video how I have configured this project and how I have set all the configuration from here, that which value it has to actually pick up. Okay, so now I have defined all those things. You have to also do one more thing, is that go to your playlist, and here I'll just first copy it 2 times and add these values here. Okay, now this part is done. That means I have added to all it of it configuration. Now how we were using it. So I already have written this class in that video, I think number 8, where how to read this configuration file based on the value. And that time I created this configuration to distinguish between different environment, and then this one enum to read the API. Okay, but now let's change it little bit. Okay, so now instead of enum, what I will do, I'll create this as a class. So final class, and I'll call this as configuration manager. So the same class here, and let's change it to configuration. Okay, and inside this, what we can have, this we can create as a singleton class. So if you want to know more about singleton, I have video on that as well in the interview playlist, so do have a watch on that. Okay, so this singleton is ready. Now right now what will happen, that every time when you actually come to this configuration manager dot share dot base URL, every time it will try to call this build configuration dot value, and every time it will read it from your configuration file. So I don't want it to read it all the time, because these things are something which are not going to change. Like once you launch the project, whatever the value you have, it's going to remain throughout that app cycle. So instead of reading it multiple time, I can read it just one time. Okay, and we also have defined two more values. Let's define three property basically here. That generally I don't use implicit optional, but in this case I have used implicit optional because in any scenarios, if this value become nil, that means something is wrong with the application. There is no meaning of running application when your base URL is nil, or when your rapid API host is nil, or when your rapid API key is nil, because without that any of your API call will not work. So that we can avoid having optional keyword here. Okay, so I will now write a init method. So I'm not going to get it in the init method, so I'm going to call some function and use it. That's the reason that I have not made it as a plain string. Okay, so let's have init method here, and again obviously this is singleton, so it's always have to be private, otherwise there is no meaning that we are calling this class as singleton class. And then let's create a function here called setup values. And what will the function of this? To set up all the values that we are going to use. Okay, now let's remove this method is not required now, and let's bring this here. Instead of returning it, what we can do, we can set it. Okay, we can set, for example, base URL equals to this. Copy this two more time, and let's go here and copy the keys. And let's change the value. Okay, now one thing to notice here is that the base URL, what we are returning from here, this doesn't have that HTTPS, because if you use this special character, that will is not supported into this configuration file. So what we can do is we can have a private variable here, which is, we can call it as URL, and this we can assign it to here, and base URL we can make it as again simple like this. A computer properties, well, whenever this is called, I'll simply append https colon and then the URL. Okay, that's it. Okay, so now we are good with this configuration manager where I can access all of my base URLs and also some keys which are hard coded. Okay, like in when you develop some application, there will be some keys like some sort of configuration parameters which will be hard coded, which has to be passed in your request. And again, some keys will be dynamic. For example, your access token, refresh token, those things. Once you do authentication and you get the data, then you have to use those things as well into your request body. But for this case, we don't have any such things. Now this part is done. And now the other thing that we require to make a API call is basically the headers and the endpoint, right? So let's again go back to the network here and create an enum called bz endpoint. Okay, now what this is going to create, this is going to contain all the endpoint that is going to be in your application. Again, like there are multiple way of handling it. Like for example, that let's say that if your application have 200 endpoints, which is a very rare case, and you will not have that much endpoint. But let's say that if you have too many and you think that one enum is becoming too overcrowded or too big to be no, and it is decreasing your readability of the code, then you can break this into at the module level. For example, let's say that when you're working on an application which is very big, okay, so generally that application will be divided into multiple modules. For example, that you're working in a banking sector, and there the module can be, let's say, one is your authentication, one is your let's say related to accounts, one is related to notification, like that you have multiple modules. And so in each module you can have a no separate enum for handling the endpoints related to that. But in this case I'm just going with one endpoint because I don't have multiple endpoint here. Okay, again, this even the one endpoint is very good for a project where you have 20-30. I think that's not good. I think that's not going to create any issues. Okay, so case, the first thing is chapters. So this endpoint I'll use to get all the chapters of my app. Now if you see here, let's me go here again. We have get all chapter, get a particular chapter, then get all the verses and get a particular verse. So there are 4 endpoints that we are going to use in this application. Okay, so case, then chapter, and if you see when you call get a particular chapter, then you are passing the chapter number. Okay, that means that this has to take a parameter called chapter number. Okay, I'm taking it a string because in the URL finally we'll need a string, not a integer. Now the next thing is that if you go here again, get all verses. Okay, now here you have to pass chapter number and no verses number. And if you see the second one, you have to pass chapter number and the verses number both. Okay, so here I can just copy this and call it as verses, means return all the verses in a chapter. And then I'll have one more endpoint which I'll call verse, and here I'll have chapter number also and verse number also. Okay, so these are my 4 endpoints. Now what we can do, we can write a extension of it, and inside this we create something called path, because path is or endpoint is something which we have to pass to make the full URL. Okay, so path going to be a string type, and then we have to write a switch to self, implementing all the cases. Okay, Now for the chapters, what we have endpoint, if you see here for chapters, we have slash v2 slash chapters, right? So return this one. Now for particular chapter, if you see, we have v2 slash chapter, then number, then that hyphen. So return, then sorry, and here we have to replace this with our chapter number. Okay, go to verses, and again this is slash verses. Let's copy this, and again replace this with chapter number. Let's go to the final one, which is getting a particular verse. And here we have to replace both chapter number and the verse number. Okay, so now our endpoint is ready. Okay, now the next thing is to create the headers. Okay, now in most of the application that you are going to work, there are going to be two type of parameters in the header. One is which is constant, one is which will be dynamic. Now constant, again, as I was talking in the beginning, will be this kind of parameter like some sort of key, and dynamic will be like your access token or some reference token. So we can always define one header where we can have a function or have a variable to return you a default headers. That is like a kind of mandatory header that will go with all the requests. And again, something will be dynamic, that we can have one more function to give you dynamic header. Then we can combine those two header and pass it to the final call. In this case, I'm going to just have one default header. So let's create this as a bg headers. Okay, and this we can create like a class, and inside that I can have a static where and call it as default headers. And headers is going to be a dictionary, so dictionary, and then let me write the headers. So I'm just taking 4 parameters, that is content type, which is application JSON, accept, and then the API key and the API host, and this is coming from your configuration manager. Okay, so now we are ready with our base URL, we are ready with our network layer, endpoints and headers. Okay, so in the next video we are going to inject this dependency into our dependency container, and then we are going to write the repository layer and the view model for our home view. So hope you have liked this video, and if you have liked it, then do share, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Thank you.